Welcome to the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. We sit down with passionate leaders in higher education for their thoughts and insights in today's world. We are excited to have as our guest Dr. Karthryn Morris, President of St. Lawrence University in Canton, New York.
Yeah. So and I know you've been there a little while, but how has the transition been, from Butler University and to your role now as president?
Yeah, I've been here. This is the end of my third year. So I'm 2 years and 3/4 in, I guess. Yeah, and the transition's been good. That first year was the first year that I was here was the second year of COVID. So you may recall that at the beginning of that academic year, everybody was vaccinated. We were all feeling pretty good. Everyone was feeling like we're past this. And then we all discovered that vaccines still allow everyone to get COVID. You're just not quite as sick. So we had a pretty sizable uptick of COVID at the beginning of my first year, and we had to deal with all of that. And the rules were, different. So that was a little bit more challenging than I think anybody had bargained for.
Now, did you keep the campus open?
We did. Yeah. This campus was open during the first year of COVID, the 2020, 2021 year before I got here. And we did keep the campus open the second year. There was a moment there where we had enough spread. Nobody was seriously ill, but we had enough spread, and the rules of the 10 days of whatever it was called, quarantine, we had maxed out. Like if it had gotten any worse, I would have had to send everybody home. And I'm so glad that didn't happen.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. My goodness.
Yeah. So that's kind of the hard thing of the transition. The work transition has been fine. I know that your first question or one of the questions is about mentorship. And I feel like the president I worked for at Butler did a really nice job of preparing me to be a president, and relatively few things that I've encountered here that I wasn't prepared for.
Now, are you still able to teach? Because I know you have a history of being part of faculty as well.
Yeah, I have a faculty designation here, but I have not taught a class here. I have taught a couple of guest lectures when I've been invited, which is always nice.
Absolutely. But I'm sure you're probably in a way teaching every day as you talk to prospective students and families and current students and alums.
I think we all are educators. I tend to use the language of teachers being the people who are professionally in the classroom doing that, but there's a lot of ways to be an educator. Our coaches are educators, our student life staff are educators, everybody who's working with students, even if they're not in a classroom, they're an educator. So I am from that perspective. You can't take it out of a person, I don't think.
Well, and so what are a couple of the senior leadership characteristics that you feel like, you've adopted and you need moving into that role as the president, and maybe things that you've learned over the last few years?
Yeah, I would say patience and resilience are both really important, making the move from being the number 2 person at the institution, which is where I was before, to the number 1 person. The patience is important, and I knew that even as a provost in a previous job. The resilience is really important because anything and everything that happens when you're in the presidency ultimately comes down to you. And it can feel a little bit like, oh my gosh, that now too. Oh my gosh, that now too. And some of the things that are the that's are relatively minor, but some of them are bigger. And there's just a lot that comes to the president of the institution, and you have to not let any given thing really get you down, because your job is to be there for the institution and to be there for the students, but also to be there for the faculty and the staff and the alumni and the trustees, et cetera. So the resilience piece is really important. And I don't know that I appreciated that or understood that when I wasn't in this position.
Yeah. Is it tough to compete just for St. Lawrence. I mean, that some people may say that the market is saturated, with universities and colleges and throw in community colleges too. So, how hard is it to really not just be distinctive, but then make sure prospective students and families know those distinctive characteristics about the school?
Yeah. One of the things that I'll say to you, Brad, is that actions speak louder than words. We all know that phrase. I feel that a lot of the time people feel it when they come to a college campus as opposed to what you say. There's an ethos at every institution, and students and their families need to look for where it feels right to them. We certainly talk during admitted student programs or even prospective student programs. We talk about the things that we think make us unique or the things that we're proud of, even if they don't make us unique compared to other institutions. But really, it's how people feel when they walk around campus. It's how they feel when they have interactions with other folks on their campus. There's an art to that experience of choosing a college as much as there is a science.
Now, are you spending time fundraising?
I do spend time fundraising, yes.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that is, I oftentimes, and again, I'll let you answer this question, but, well, I'll ask the question. What makes a successful fundraiser?
Well, I'm not a professional fundraiser. I'm a psychology professor. And so everything else that I've done in terms of leadership and student recruitment and fundraising, all of those are things that I'm brought in on. And I would say to you that success as a fundraiser means being a good part of a strong team. No one does fundraising successfully on their own. I am prepared for every interaction that I have by the folks in University Advancement who do their research, by all of the people who have preceded me in this role, the previous presidents, the major gift officers, the principal gift officers who go with me. It doesn't happen alone, and there's a lot of planning. And ultimately, fundraising is about inspiring people. It's not about asking for what I need. It's about helping philanthropists to see how they can make the difference they're trying to make in the world through your institution.
So how do you make sure that you're engaging, I guess, students and families, especially when they're first generation? How do you make sure that these families are equipped with the answers they need as far as, hey, what's the value of a degree? What's the value of education in a college setting?
Yeah, and again, I think it's a combination of what you say and what you do. In terms of what you say, you have to have all of the right data points, and we do at St. Lawrence University. We can talk about the placement rates for, students getting jobs within 6 months after they graduate. We can talk about their success getting into graduate or professional school. We are a Peace Corps prep school, so we have a lot of students who go into the Peace Corps, et cetera. So we can talk about all of that, about the success that happens to students after campus or after they graduate from our campus. We can also talk about the things that we do to support students while they are on campus. We can talk about the academic advising, the co-curricular pieces of things, the athletic pieces of things. We can talk about all of those things. But again, the real value in education is what we show through how we behave towards the students every day. And that includes how the faculty interact with students. And we're very proud that students tell the Princeton Review that our faculty are highly accessible, and we're ranked very highly compared to all private institutions, whether they're Ivies or liberal arts colleges or master's comprehensives or whatever in between. Our students rank us very highly in terms of the accessibility of the faculty. So that's one piece of it. It's the accessibility of the staff, the care with which people interact with students, the fact that we'll stop them and ask them how they're doing, the fact that we write them handwritten notes after they come to campus to visit. it's those behavioral components that also convey the value. And one of the things that we rely on a lot at St. Lawrence, because it's a strength of ours, is the quality and the engagement and the fierce loyalty of the alumni network. We are ranked very highly in terms of the quality of our alumni network, and we use the alumni for mentoring, for job shadowing, for internships, for job placement, and the way that we rely on the Laurentian community beyond Canton, New York, is another piece of the value of a St. Lawrence education. We are in a small rural community in far northern New York. We have an outsized presence in New York City, in Boston, in DC, Chicago, LA, San Francisco Bay Area. For a school as small as we are, we're quite fierce in some of these places. So we do rely on the alumni as a strong differentiator for us.
You have roughly 2,100 undergrads. Is that right?
Approximately, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how big do you want to get, and how big can you get?
I think I've looked at this across the time since, and I didn't go to St. Lawrence, but I went to another school very similar to it. So in the 35 years, that I've thought about colleges, since I don't remember exactly how many years ago I started college, but St. Lawrence has been around 2,000 students. Sometimes it's been a little above, sometimes it's been a little below. I think that this mark has been a historic sweet spot for us. We don't have a strategy right now to try to grow to 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 students. And I think that's a good thing, because when you look at the national demographics and the national economics, it would be a very difficult challenge to try to grow the size of institutions right now with the demographic changes and the economic challenges that are out there kind of nationally, where there are fewer families who have kids that are going to college, and those families need more financial aid.
So how do you make sure that students are career ready, especially when jobs today may not exist in 10 years, and jobs in 10 years may not be here today?
Well, that's part of the value of a liberal arts education, because we are not educating students for a niche career. We are educating students on how to think, on how to communicate, on how to learn, and how to continue to grow throughout their lives. That is something that I have believed in profoundly through my entire life. I grew up on a liberal arts college campus. I went to a liberal arts college, and I've worked in a liberal arts environment for my full career. So I think this particular iteration of education does a really nice job, because we are educating the person for growth rather than for niche knowledge in a specific area. We have made significant investments into our Center for Career Excellence. That's been a strong initiative over the last 5 years. So starting before I arrived at St. Lawrence, and we've continued that work since I've arrived at St. Lawrence. We have a lot of opportunities for students to engage with the Center for Career Excellence. Physically, it's located in our student center in a very prominent spot, so nobody will miss it. There are classes students can take there. There are career advisors. We rely on that alumni network. One of the things that we do that's a program that I really love is called SLU Connect, SLU being St. Lawrence University, Connect being Connect with the Alumni. This is where we take a group of students to a city, and we allow them to learn from alumni and parents in that city about the various career opportunities in that city. So we might have students who are history majors, philosophy majors, econ majors, business and the liberal arts majors, etc., who go to New York City, and they interact with and learn about people in the financial sector, people in the arts sector, people in the entertainment sector, etc. And it really helps the students to discern what they're interested in doing in the world. And our question that we ask students in the Center for Career Excellence is not what do you want to do? It's how do you want to make impact? And by not asking them, what do you want to do? And instead asking how they want to make impact, we're opening up the realm of possibilities beyond that job that they might start in that stops existing 3 years later. I hope that answers.
I no, I love that. And I definitely love how you cap that off with how do you want to make an impact? Because I would imagine you could speak to this better than I could, but I'd imagine that students, when they're asked about, well, what job do you want to get? I mean, that question, the answer might be, well, I don't know. Or what do you want to do with your life? Well, even at senior year, and correct me if I'm wrong, but even at senior year, I'm sure there's some trepidation, there's some uncertainty. But when you talk about, well, how do you want to make an impact? I would think a student probably could get to that answer, his or her answer, more quickly, and they can be much more passionate. If that makes sense.
Right. What do you care about? What matters to you?
Yeah.
And then let's turn that into a career and a specific job. I talk about this as Laurentian impact, and I talk about it all the time, that what I care about is not, I care that students get jobs right after they graduate. I want that to happen. But what I really care about is that they find a way to make the world a better place in a way that's meaningful to them. And that's very specific to each individual. But we want to empower every student at St. Lawrence to find a way to leave the world better than they found it. And most often that will be through their career-related work. In some cases, it might be through their philanthropy. It might be through their civic engagement. But we want them to find a pathway that's meaningful. And I think this is the psychologist in me that comes out, that as a psychology professor, I understand the importance of having a sense of purpose and meaning in your life to live a good life. And I care about that for our students.
Yeah. Well, and it goes beyond money.
Right. Although I think you want them to have enough money to get by on, right? Like we all.
You're right.
There is a return on investment that is financially important. But if you have a good salary, if you're making a good living without making a good life, that's not good either. You've got to need both. You want to make a living and make a life. And that is a phrase that one of my former presidents at Butler used to say a lot. So.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love that. Well, I remember a long time ago, early in my career, when maybe I was focused a little too much on right out of school, hey, how much money can I make? And I remember one of my, my colleagues that told me, he said, look, if, are you passionate about this? Do you love this? The money, you will, if you're passionate, you love what you do, the money will come.
Well, you create job security for yourself and you open doors for yourself when you find something that you're good at, that you're passionate about, and then you do a good job at work and good things happen for you. You create that success for yourself.
Where do you see St. Lawrence in 5 or 10 years?
Well, I would say physically, St. Lawrence will be where it is now in 5 or 10 years. We're located here in Canton, New York, which is in the northern, it's called the North Country section of New York. And we will have spokes out from our physical campus in New York, just as we do now, in the Adirondacks, in New York City, in Kenya, where we have one of the oldest study abroad programs, and we actually own and operate a campus there and have a bunch of employees there, and in London. So we'll continue to have our outposts in the various places where we currently do. Metaphorically, where St. Lawrence will be, or where I would like St. Lawrence to be in 5 to 10 years, is to be a national model for how a small, private, residential, liberal arts college in a rural community can thrive as a place where students grow into themselves and figure out how they will contribute to the world. It's challenging times in higher education, and I want us to be one of the best exemplars of how to do this well when you're a small private in a rural location.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Karthryn Morris, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate the time, Brad.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of College Admission TV Presidential Podcast with Dr. Karthryn Morris, President of St. Lawrence University. Stay tuned for our next podcast where we will sit down with Roger Hughes, President of Doane University in Crete, Nebraska.